Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chillin and Millin. This is a magic-based podcast hosted by three guys who are only 2 drinks away from arguing that Thoughtseize is in fact overcosted and needs to be cheaper, and only half joking about it.
We all want that Phyrexian mana.
I'm convinced one day that they're gonna look at Thoughtseize and think, well, what if it was only one life? And then just someone, either that or someone's had that thought. They've probably been instantly fired, but I bet someone in Wizards has had that thought. Well, they've looked at Thoughtseize and went, we could balance this, or we could make it worse.
So they kind of have something like that. Like, have you ever seen Unmask?
I should have.
So, okay. Unmask is basically... I should look this up, really, but I'm going to take a stab in the dark anyway. It's basically Thoughtseize.
I've got it up. Go for it.
Okay, so it's Thoughtseize, but it costs, I'm going to say 4 mana, 2 and 2 black, or you can exile a black card from your hand and you get to Thoughtseize somebody without losing the 2 life.
It is 3 and a black, but yes, apart from that, you were correct.
Yeah. Played in Legacy Reanimator?
Something like that. Well, it's a pretty good card. Like, right. I said this last time, and I didn't say this last time. I said this at one point, and I'll say this again. I'm convinced that Thoughtseize is still one of the most powerful cards ever printed in black.
Yes, it's definitely the most powerful black card in Pioneer by an absolute country mile.
Oh my god! I'm glad you brought this up. Remember when we talked about Pioneer and I said that Thoughtseize was going to define the format, and you two laughed at me, and here we are.
Laughing is quite a bold statement.
You poo-pooed me and said, "I'll be fine," and here we are with every.
I still claim it's fine.
Here we are with every black deck playing a 4 of. Literally every single one. I like the fact, right, I've been looking at Pioneer decks recently because, right, we'll just get into, I suppose, we'll talk about this later because this is probably where I can introduce what I've been doing. So why don't we just introduce ourselves because that's probably better. Sam, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sam, play a lot of Commando and stuff. And that's about it, really.
I was going to say, brilliant. Thanks, Sam, mate. What have you been doing this week?
Huh? Oh, what have I been doing this week? I've been, to be fair, like, not a lot. Actually, that's a lie. I've been doing a lot more work on my Commander Cube. I feel that I've got the card list that I want. It's perfect. And so now... Oh, also, Tapped Out decided to delete half of my cube, which was horrifying.
I would take that as a sign, mate.
No, I think it's a sign to double down.
Yeah, literally. Just
or double the cards, if you will.
You still need to send me that list, Sam.
Yeah, I do need to decide on the cards that I actually need for it. It's just so much effort. But I'm getting around to it. I've got Christmas to work on it. But yeah, no. So I've been doing that. Today I ordered the lands and artifacts that I need for it. And yeah, and aside from that, which is kind of Magic related, I found a new card game which I can play on my computer, which is really awesome.
Oh, what are you
playing?
So I used to play Hearthstone until the whole thing with China went down and Blizzard. And so now I'm playing something called Eternal.
Yeah. Would this be a really bad opportunity to introduce our sponsors for this episode?
It's Huawei, the Chinese.
Yes,
they just instantly shut us down.
I was going to say this is where you beep. No, I'm kidding. Go for it.
So it's just I don't actually know who makes the card game, but I know it's not Blizzard. And it's basically a clone of Magic the Gathering, only you can play it on iOS.
Okay.
Would highly recommend it if anyone wants to play Magic but doesn't want to play Arena because they don't have Windows. Because Arena's only available on Windows, which is really annoying.
Like, it's apparently their long-term plan to bring it to like Mac OS, and then presumably they're going to bring it to like tablets and stuff. It makes the most sense, right?
I mean, I'm surprised that they haven't brought it to tablets right now, considering that most of Magic Arena is dragging and dropping.
Yeah, it seems like custom built for like touchscreens.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was originally built for touchscreens and then someone told them that Windows 8 was no longer the default like OS that people were using, and so they just kind of shift it.
Windows 10 is also built for touchscreen because I'm literally recording on a Windows 10 touchscreen right now.
I mean, I'm recording on a Windows 10 not touchscreen, and I would literally never be able to figure out why this would ever be a touchscreen. Considering I don't have the dragging of it. Anyway, this is a Magic podcast. What are we discussing OSs?
Yes, that's a different podcast.
I was going to say, you with your bad OS concepts. Who are you?
I'm William. I'm the podcast's L1 judge. I'm mainly interested in constructed formats, so I played a lot of Modern and Pioneer and Canadian Highlander. And I've not been doing a lot this week, in all honesty. Like, I played little bit of Commander. I've helped my girlfriend build her first Commander deck, so that was very fun. Yeah, she's built an Alila deck.
Ooh.
Effing terrifying. Like, legit, it's running about 14 enchantment-based... what's the word? The thing that gives everything +1/+1. Anthems. It's running 14 anthems. And when he decides it wants to make 6/6 double striking, life linking angels, that's a scary ass deck.
My favorite thing about you building your deck with your girlfriend is the fact that we were chatting 2 days ago. It wasn't 2. Oh god, it was it was 2 days ago. We were chatting 2 days ago, and we were discussing that, and you just went, yeah, she's buying a Blitter Blossom after Christmas, and I'm like, what?
Oh yeah, she hit it hard. Like, I think I started teaching her how to play about 2 or 3 months ago, and like since then she's hit it very hard. And as soon as she saw Bitter Blossom, she was like, I want it. It's not even like the original is it the Eternal Masters? The Infinity symbol set.
I'm looking now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Ultimate Masters.
The Ultimate Masters art. And she's like, I want it. And I want it foil.
She stared at, oh my god, she wants the almost £50.
She's also told me that she's completely of her own volition. She's like, when's the next GP? I was like, June, July, sometime like that. Is in Liverpool. It's like, I'm going to it, and me and Sam were gonna kick everybody's asses.
That'd be funny.
Yeah, I think she wants to go. I think she just wants to go there to foil out her land base to tell people she's not effing around.
Yeah, and then there's me sat there going, so if it's modern, I'm GPing properly, right?
Yeah, no, that's me as well. It's like, sweetie, you can play Commander, but I'm going to be over there playing Modern.
Yeah, I'm going to be over there trying to make sure I don't make a single mistake, else people stamp on me. Excuse me, Judge. He missed a cue. No, I didn't. Don't give me a warning, please.
Yeah, the old Judge. My opponent's missed a trigger. Yeah, so that's been my week in Magic. It's not been very interesting, but it's been quite fun actually. Like, I don't get to build EDH decks with other people very often, so like it's quite a novel experience. Like taking a stab in the dark at it.
It is always fun.
Yeah. So, Hugh, who are you and what have you been up to this week?
I'm Hugh. I am the podcast's guy. And this week I have been playing a lot of Standard on Arena because apparently I've got nothing better to do. And I have been lamenting the fact that it is weirdly harder to win a game when you are silver ranked in Arena than it is when you're gold ranked in Arena, because silver ranked in Arena is where all the jank hangs out. And I've literally never been more annoyed than when I'm playing against jank cards that apparently knew I was coming. My personal favorite one was when I was playing my blue-black mill deck, and I was playing against a janky mono green deck that played, and I can't remember the card's name, but literally I had them down to like 5 cards in library, and I'm like, I'm pretty confident here. At which point I then spend the next 5 minutes watching them as they play the 4-drop Centaur, which allows them to shuffle any number of cards from their graveyards back into their library. No other abilities and not a particularly good card. As I literally stop and watch their timer tick down, as I can see them individually clicking every single card in their graveyard ready to go back in the library. And I'm sat there going, I've got to do this again. I've straight up got to do this again. And so when I eventually made it into gold, my response was, thank God I get to play good decks.
So I completely agree with you. It's like I had this experience last time I was at GP Birmingham, and it was a modern main event GP. So I was running around the main event just kind of being nosy. It was no that deck, no that deck, no that deck, no that deck, no that deck. It's like I could sideboard against all of these. And then I went to a side event, a modern side event, and it was like, what the F am I playing against? How do I sideboard against this? What's going on?
No, that's the issue, isn't it? The moment someone pulls out Jank, you're like, I don't know what to do against it. My sideboard is designed in Modern specifically to take down top tier decks. I have sideboard cards that can take down Tron, Death and Taxes, Storm, Jund, any graveyard interaction. If you turn up to me with like a top tier deck, I can sideboard effectively against you. The moment you turn up with mono green Ponza and land destruction, I don't know what the hell to do. I had a guy that was literally plowing under my lands every turn, and I'm just like, what do I do against you?
So, do you know what my most sideboarded card was that entire weekend?
God, what deck were you playing?
I was playing Jeskai Copycat.
I was going to say, sorry, Jeskai Control. Was it?
Jeskai Tempo, but yeah.
I want to say something like Rest in Peace, but I know I'm wrong.
Actually, no, it actually wasn't, because it was during Hogak Summer, Hogak Winter, whatever it was. But Hogak no, nobody was playing Hogak, because if anybody was a dick, they were in like the main event.
Yeah.
So it was actually a Leyline of Sanctity.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because if people are playing Jank, they normally play black, so they can play hand attack, so people can't interfere with their Jank. Yeah,
that makes sense, actually.
No idea what you're on, Leyline of Sanctity. Slam it down.
There feels nothing better than slamming a Leyline and watching your opponent just sigh deeply.
Oh, do you know what feels best?
Slamming Leyline of Sanctity down against a burn player.
No, slamming Leyline of Sanctity down against a burn player, then proceeding to cast six lightning helixes and finishing the game on more life than you started.
That's pretty good. That feels
good.
That feels good.
It feels really good.
But yeah, I've been lamenting Jank, and this is from someone who has been building Jank on Arena recently. I've got Wolf Tribal, which is awful.
Brilliant.
Sounds awful.
Yeah, my mono black aggro deck, which is unfortunately slowly falling out of the meta as people figure out how to deal with it, annoyingly. My current favorite deck, which is the deck I've been playing since almost day one I got into Arena, which is Simic Ascendancy, which people...
Are you still playing that?
People still don't know how to deal with it, and it turns out that the moment they print an X-cost creature with no additional mana, it just works. Biogenic Ooze just prints money. You know the GIF of Pikachu, where like when it's the GIF of them like holding the Pikachu next to the Nintendo DS and the Pikachu, and it's like it shits money. That's me in Biogenic Ooze when I'm playing Civic Ascendancy. I remember the other day playing a game where I was playing up against someone. I was playing against Gates, and they had all 4 of their Gate Colossuses out on the battlefield. And for the first time ever, it didn't matter because I also had all 4 of my Biogenic Oozes out of the battlefield. So it's like I have 8/8s. That's nice. These are all like 15/15s, and they're going to become 8. They're going to become 19/19s the moment I pass the turn. So literally, come at me.
Come at me, bro.
You just sit behind the wall of giant slimes and just hope you draw into a 2-drop enchantment. But yeah, it's that's been my week. That's been my week in Magic. I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, sounds fun.
And I suppose apart from just that, there's been a couple of other things that have been going on in Magic because we've kind of been avoiding over the last couple of months talking about the Theros leak, and I think we'll probably continue to not talk about the Theros leak because whatever.
We shouldn't have to avoid talking about it for that much longer, though.
I suppose
they've scheduled this. They've got the schedule out for when the spoilers are going to be coming out. And I think they stop around the 10th of January.
I was going to say they're coming out now because we're getting quite a few coming out. But what we can say is that it is now spoiler season. Get the alarm. And it is it's spoiler season for Theros Beyond Death, the next Magic set. And instead of specifically looking at the cards that are coming out and becoming like every other Magic podcast ever, I thought that we would instead discuss the 3 mechanics that we know are definitely either making a return or coming into Theros Beyond Death, and then discuss one card that I'm convinced is awful, but we'll get to that. So, Mr. William, I will hand you over to discuss our first mechanic, which is a returning mechanic.
So there are 3 mechanics in Theros Beyond Death, and the first one is the return of Devotion, which made its show-stopping appearance in the first Theros block.
I think it was just in Theros, yeah.
Was it just in Theros?
I think, well, no, I think it was in all 3 Theros sets, but I think it made its debut in the first Theros.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So Devotion is one of those weird mechanics where the word devotion doesn't actually mean anything. It's more of a flag, which says this card cares about the number of pips of each color that you have. So if, say, a card cares about my devotion to blue, when that card enters the battlefield or when that spell resolves, it will count the number of blue pips that you have in permanents you control, and then that will correspond to a number which affects the spell. So the big example, and probably the most famous, is Grey Merchant of Asphodel.
Good old Gary.
Which says when it enters the battlefield, it target opponent loses X life and you gain X life.
I think it's all opponents, honestly, mate.
I think it is. I think it's all opponents lose X life and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. And where X is your devotion to black.
Do you gain the life as well on Gary?
Oh yeah. Gary's brutal.
I play Gary in my blue-black zombie deck, and it is brutal to be able to just drop that down late in the game and watch everyone as they get annoyed that they lose 10 life and I gain 30. It's really fun.
Gary ends games. Like, I play him in a mono-black Canadian Highlander deck, and playing Gary in the same deck where you play Necropotence is fun.
There's a straight-up reason why mono black is a pioneer deck, and Gary's like the linchpin of it.
Gary, Thoughtseize, and what's the rats?
Relentless Rats?
No.
Rats?
I have no idea.
The rat. So in the original Theros deck, there was a mono black devotion deck which basically relied around.
I'm looking it up now.
Gary and the rats and Thoughtseize. It was a very, very good deck. It dominated standard for a while. But the important part is Pack Rat. Yeah, there we go. Pack Rat.
Yeah.
Pack Rat is a very, very good card. You don't realize how good Pack Rat is until you play with it. I've cast a turn 1 Pack Rat off a Mox Jet. And that's all
right, legacy player, calm down.
Legacy player, vintage.
All right, vintage player, calm it down.
But yeah, so Devotion is making a return in Theros Beyond Death, and I couldn't be happier about it.
I really like Devotion as a mechanic. I think it's such a fun and unique mechanic because it's kind of like Magic has been experimenting recently with trying to force people into mono colors. And I'm kind of happy with that because it's very rare. Like, mono-colored decks don't really exist a huge amount in Standard unless, like, Wizards try and do something. So, Dominaria, they did the 3 pips of a color to get a good creature out of it. And that essentially helped mono-red aggro after the Armaket block really take off.
I'm not going to lie, those 3 pip creatures actually helped a lot more decks than you think they did. So obviously, Chain Whirler helped the dominance of mono red aggro in Standard.
To the point where I heard a lot of people talk about it being banned, but there we go.
But also, Tempest Djinn is a very powerful card and is the backbone of the mono blue tempo, mono blue aggro deck. Autumn Blanchette.
Mono blue aggro was a surprisingly good deck in Standard at its time. It was mono blue flyers, but the whole idea was it played that and it played the one drop enchantment, which was aura, which was you had to attack every turn.
A curious obsession.
Obsession,
That's the one. Yeah, and it was just good.
You also played Terramander and a bunch of different.
Yeah,
It was a very, very good deck. Awesome Blanchett took it to a Mythic Championship win.
There was the 3 white one, which was an anthem for every single one of your creatures.
Yeah, which is turning up in Pioneer.
Yeah, there was the 3 black one, whom I'll be honest, I literally cannot remember what it did.
So it's a 3/3 with the normal shade ability, so you can pay 1 black and it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It's not turned up. It's very likely to turn up in some sort of mono black aggro deck or mono black mid range deck in Pioneer at some point. I play it in Highlander. It's very fun.
And then finally, you had Steel Leaf Champion in green, which made its way into modern in tier 2 elf decks.
Modern Pioneer, it's a very good card.
Yeah, so the whole idea is that was them pushing monocolors. Then we then had in Throne of Eldraine, them pushing monocolors with Advent. Is it Advent? Yeah, Advent. Adamant. No, sorry, not Advent.
No. We're in Advent now. The mechanic was Adamant.
Yeah, good joke. Don't date the podcast. Adamant, yeah. So Adamant was the whole idea about force was making people like, why don't you play a monocolor? And then Devotion does the same thing. I like this because the problem monocolor decks always has is it's like, yes, you are much more likely to be less color screwed if you go monocolored, but because you're only in one color, you are straight up not allowed, to pretty much deal with your color's weaknesses. As a result, it makes so much more sense to me that they are actually taking cards like Devotion, like Devotion, and making it so that, actually, if you play a monocolor, it's absolutely going to help you.
Yeah. So also, like, Devotion tends to be a very well-received mechanic. So a lot of people like Gary.
Master of Waves.
Master of Waves, which is obviously a powerhouse in modern Merfolk.
Yeah.
And then obviously you've got like Nithos Shrine for Nyx, which is, I'm pretty sure it's like an EDH staple.
Absolute staple, makes its way occasionally into fringe tier modern play.
It's the absolute backbone behind the mono green control builds and stuff like that.
Absolutely pile driving its way through most of Pioneer right now.
Not as much as you would think, but it's still a very, very good card in Pioneer.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong here. But you also get stuff like kind of more low-key stuff. So Aspect of the Hydra is a surprisingly brutal card.
I think, this is the thing. Like, I like the fact that they're bringing it back because I've always enjoyed the ability to actually have, something to go, right, here is a reason to play monocolor.
Yeah.
This is from someone who likes monocolor decks. So the moment someone sits down and goes, here is a concept that allows you to play that monocolored, and it's not just allows you, but like actually actively rewards you for it, is really happy. I'm happy about it. I'm looking forward to see what mythics we get with Devotion, because obviously every mechanic usually gets a mythic version. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the mythic version of this is going to be.
Yeah. So we have another returning mechanic in the second one. Sam, do you want to have a chat about that?
Yeah, so it's Constellation. And what it says is, when this creature or another enchantment enters the battlefield, do something.
So notably, this is always on either enchantments or enchantment creatures, right?
Which is, to be fair, another returning thing from... Yeah, because we don't really get enchantment creatures other places.
Enchantment creatures are really weird.
They're so much fun.
God, I love this as a Jund player, because it means that if someone drops a enchantment creature into their graveyard, all they're doing is growing the Goyf.
Grow the Goyf. So, yeah, Constellation is one of these big flag mechanics again, which is just like, Constellation itself doesn't mean anything. It just cares about enchantments entering the battlefield. I don't think, unless you are really into playing Enchantress in Legacy, I don't think many people know about many Constellation cards. Maybe Doomwake Giant is the most famous.
Probably. I think the thing is, I'll be honest, before going into this, I was like, okay, I need to look up what the new mechanics were. and I saw Constellation. I was like, all right, cool, Constellation. And I genuinely had to look up to make sure that it was a recurring mechanic because I actually could not remember.
So I think it's because Constellation was from what's the third set?
It was from Journey into Nyx.
Yeah, not a lot of people remember Journey into Nyx.
I think the issue is it was only on 19 cards, so it was only on a small amount of cards, and most of them were green or black. It was on 36%. So 36%, sorry, were green, and 31.6% were black, and then the lowest after that was 10.5% on white and blue. So it's like, did you play Golgari? Nope. Then you probably didn't see Constellation, really.
So it's a bit of a thing in like Enchantress builds. There isn't really an Enchantress deck in Modern, but there certainly is one in Legacy. And you play a couple of Constellation cards in there. What I'm hoping here, and they've already kind of hinted at this because they've spoiled a new Enchantress card. So if you don't know what an Enchantress is...
Senetson Champion. I'm looking at it right now. I love Swole Enchantress.
So an Enchantress is whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. Originally named after, I'm going to go with Argothian Enchantress.
I believe you are correct.
Yeah, something like that. And they've just spoiled a new one, which is 3 mana, 1/3.
Senetson Champion, 2 and a green for a 1/3.
Yeah.
Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card.
Yeah. So there's already like a fairly interesting Enchantress build in Pioneer at the moment. And I'm hoping that this one kind of pushes it over the top. But I'm excited for this.
I want to see more Constellation cards. I think the issue is any mechanic which forces you to play a specific type of card needs to be very much built around. So the concept of enchantment creatures makes this better. But it is something you can't just stick this in a deck and hope that it'll work. You have to definitely build around it.
Yeah, so as a rule of thumb, enchantments are an awful lot more awkward to build around than artifacts. Just because they tend to be a lot higher cost and a lot less utility. So I think this is still perfectly safe. It's not going to be like a Mirrodin block or Mirrodin besieged block problem. But no. I'm still very, very excited for this.
I'm just looking forward to seeing what they do with it. Like that's kind of where I am with a lot of cards. Just like, what are you going to do with it? I'm happy to see if it's going to be interesting or not.
Definitely.
And finally, we have got another mechanic which is coming in, which is the first of the new mechanics, and I think the only new mechanic.
It's the only new mechanic.
Unless we randomly get a new mechanic spoiled that we don't know about.
No. They've announced it. They've announced that these are the 3.
Well, there we go then. In which case, that mechanic is the escape mechanic. So escape is a weird new one. Essentially, Wizards decided that graveyard interactions weren't broken enough. No, I'm kidding. Graveyard interactions needed something, and I can kind of see where they're going about with this. Escape reads, so you may pay a mana cost and then exile a certain amount of cards from your graveyard. It will state it on the card. And then you may return that creature or planeswalker or whatever. It might be, they've also revealed recently that it may also be instant sorceries, artifacts, even equipment.
That makes sense.
Back from the graveyard to the battlefield. And this is an interesting mechanic. It seems a bit overcosted, but then again, it's graveyard interaction. I think Magic is just really wary of graveyard interaction at this point. So
it's like limited graveyard interaction, isn't it? I don't think it's meant to be super busted.
Well, for now, the escape mechanics I've seen so far have always been more expensive than the normal casting cost. Plus, you've got to do the exiling.
That makes sense, though, right? It's like Flashback, but for everything else.
Yep, I can also confirm, because this was a conversation that and Will were having on Saturday. I can confirm, Will, that it is in fact not an instant speed.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
It can only happen at the time you would be able to cast the card normally, which suddenly makes the card that I want to talk about significantly worse.
Yeah, this is why in the context of this is what we were discussing, right? It was like I hadn't quite properly read it. Yeah, you may cast it. Okay, yeah.
But exactly. The card that I'm referring to is the first card that was revealed with the escape mechanic, which is Elspeth Sun's Nemesis, which is one of the two legendary planeswalkers of the set. It's 2 and 2 white. I apologize for a legendary planeswalker, Elspeth. Weirdly, for this card, it only has minus abilities. It comes in with 5 loyalty, and it has 3 abilities. A -1, which is up to 2 target creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. -2 create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, and -3 you gain 5 life, and then it has an escape cost of 4 and 2 white, exile 4 cards from your graveyard. And the reason I want to talk about this is I think this card is just straight up bad.
Okay. Can I start off by saying something though?
Go on.
I think the design of this card is really cool.
Right, the concept of it.
Yeah, the concept of just like how the card works. Like it's a 4-mana planeswalker that you can only down-tick, and then you get back. Right, that's a really, really cool idea for a planeswalker, and they've kind of tried this before with one of the Sarkons. I can't remember it, but a mythic planeswalker that only has down ticks and somewhere to get back. I think that's a really, really cool idea for a planeswalker.
It's really similar to the Kaya that was in Conspiracy. That only had down ticks and the 0, which made you exile it and bring it back.
Yeah.
Which was good, but again, that was a lot easier to get back. I agree with you. The flavor of Elspeth Sun's Nemesis is really good. Mm-hmm. I like the flavor a lot. I can see this, and I don't know if Sam agrees with me here. I can see this becoming a commander card, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
like it's cheap, it's recurable, and it's utility. But
in a format where you have lots of mana and lots of cards in your graveyard, I can imagine it. Like particularly in like a white deck where you don't have a lot to do with your graveyard.
No, exactly.
I can see this being like a powerhouse. Not a powerhouse, but certainly like having a place.
It's value. But the issue is, from what I've looked at and from what I've seen, this card just seems really, really underpowered for what it is. So the best thing that people have described it as is they've described it as being like a planeswalker version of History of Benalia, in that it allows you to create creatures and then pump them. But the problem is, literally everyone that I've spoken to about this card and everyone that I've read about online has basically already come to the opinion that its -3 is almost completely and totally worthless and you just don't play it. And everyone's just like, 2 and 2 white, play it, -2, -2, -1. And everyone's just said that's just what you do.
Yeah.
And my response is, okay, well, it's more expensive than History of Benalia. It creates 2 1/1s, which I'd argue is almost always worse than having a 2/2. And it can be killed by someone just swinging into it or just going no with a kill spell. And so I just don't see it as working. I may be completely wrong here, and it may be that in 6 months' time we're looking at Elspeth Sun's Nemesis banned and me going, what possibly could have made this? Because again, I also didn't think the Oko was very good. But then again, I've learned from my mistakes, and I just can't see how this card would be broken. I just see it as being a bit meh, really, if I'm in all honesty. For 6 mana, which is what this escape cost is, I want a card that automatically makes a massive difference to the board state, a la the new Garrick or the new Liliana. This doesn't do that.
I think evaluating this as a 6-mana escape planeswalker is not fair. What I will say is I agree with you. In like the 4-mana Elspeths have normally gone in like white-based mid-range decks where like kind of playing that 4-mana Elspeth and then making a token, then giving it +2 and +2 and flying is like good. I don't think that's where this belongs.
Okay.
Do you know where I think this belongs?
I'm assuming something like Orzhov Graveyard Interaction.
No, I think this is a control card.
Okay, so like the whole idea that you've essentially opponent out and then you just go tick, 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 tick.
I think you actually secretly play this on 5 or 6 when you can hold up a counter spell or you've just draft. Then you play this, you down tick to make 2 white human tokens. You make some tokens and maybe it dies. And then once you're back in control of the game, you just get to play that escape cost as many times as you need to win the game. That's legit what I think this card is.
So it's kind of like infinite value in that sense. You can just rely on it always being there.
Yeah, because like once it goes back into the graveyard, you can cast it for escape again. And I would really, really advise people against underestimating things that you can just continually get back from your graveyard, even if it's 6 mana.
I agree that the continuously getting something back from the graveyard is absolutely a thing. However, I just look at this card and I think that it is just not worth it in terms of the value that you're getting from it. Because if I'm going to spend 4 mana, I don't want to then create 2 humans that also just makes my Planeswalker weaker. I look at something like this and I think to myself, okay, for that amount of for that value, I want to play Elspeth Knight Errant and say make a 1/1 Soul Stricken, but make my Planeswalker much more defensible. Or I just want to wait the extra time and for 6 mana just play a Sun's Champion and just start crapping out 1/1s.
I think you're evaluating this too harshly though. Like obviously I agree with you, this is not good enough for modern, but neither's Elspeth Sun's Champion or Elspeth, what's the other one?
Knight Errant.
Right. And Elspeth Sun's Champion used to be the finisher in control decks. And what do control decks love? Recurability. That's why they play stuff like Snapcaster Mage. And they used to play, and why in Pioneer you play Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, literal actual baby Jace. Because when it flips, you can get an instant or sorcery back for your graveyard. And you really, really love recurable threats from your graveyard, and this is what it is. Like if I'm trading 1 for 1 or 2 for 1 with a control deck, and eventually my opponent is just going to have a land in hand, and I can just play this for 6 mana, down tick, and then counter their next spell.
I do get it. I do get kind of where this is, like where it is going to see play. Because like, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's not going to see play. I just think for what it is, it's really not good enough. I think
I'm on your side here, Hugh, actually, yeah. I do agree with you, Will. I do think it shouldn't be evaluated in the same way as a regular Planeswalker, because regular Planeswalkers, they have an uptick, which is, regular Planeswalkers should be evaluated based on, well, maybe not, maybe that's a bit of a lie, but they're like inevitable with the uptick.
Yeah.
With Elspeth, though, it's got that eternal cost to it. It dies, you bring it back, ... I do think Hugh is right, though. Paying 6 mana and exiling 4 cards from your graveyard just to make 2 1/1s, it seems bad.
It's not just to play 2 1/1s though, is it? Like you get 2 1/1s and you get a Planeswalker on 3. And ultimately you're not spending a card from your hand.
True. Worst case scenario, you get 2 1/1s out of it. But for 6 mana, for 6 mana, my worst case scenario, I don't want that 6 to be 2 1/1. And I know that's me kind of being a bit weird, because it's like, you look at the new Liliana and think, okay, worst case scenario, I get a 2/2, which is kind of the same. But I don't know. I don't rate the card. I don't rate it. I also think a lot of its minus abilities are overcosted. I think its -3 gain 5 life is overcosted.
Oh, that's utterly baffling. Like I'm not sure why that's there.
Straight up, -2 create 2 1/1 soldiers. Okay, that's called the guard, or called what's it called?
Gather the townsfolk.
No, it is, but it's the other. What's the instant one? I literally, raise the alarm. I literally play it in modern. I don't know why I didn't know. But it's raise the alarm. So what we can say then is -2 is 2 mana. It's 1 white for that ability. gaining 5 life is not a 3 mana ability at all. It's a 1 mana to gain 3 life, or 1 mana to gain 4 life, as we found out if you're in green. Which means that for -3, at best you should be getting 12 life, and at worst you should be getting like 9, not 5.
Okay, so do you know what I think?
Go on.
I think that just proves it's a control card.
What, the idea to just gain 5 life?
Yeah, because what did control deck struggle against?
Aggro.
Aggro. So if you're a control deck, you slam this on 4, you downtick to 3 to make 5 life, and then it either absorbs 2 more life, or 2 more attackers or something, or they just ignore it. The next turn, you make 2 1/1s, 1 more creature tokens. Would you pay 4 mana for a card that gained you 5 life and made you 2 1/1 white humans?
Depends, really. I don't know. Again, it depends. I mean, I don't poo-poo life gain. I've really never poo-pooed life gain. I mean, I'm the person that plays Knight of Autumn in Modern, and quite frequently uses its gain 4 life ability.
But that's because, like, against aggro decks, gaining incidental life or just gaining life is good. There's a reason why Feed the Clan was like a card that was played in Modern for a while.
Oh no, I get that. I just think that it's overcosted. For -3,
yeah.
Absolutely, I don't want 5 life. Like, I almost think there should be a -1, -2, -2.
Yeah,
because
probably.
I don't know. I look at this card and I think, I'm sure they've gone through hours upon days upon months of playtesting with it. But I also straight up look at it and think, meh. I'm more interested in the artwork, if I'm honest, but we'll get to that.
The artwork's sick. I love Elspeth.
Well, I love Elspeth as well. Do you mind if I talk about the artwork for a second?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna make a prediction here, looking at this artwork. So number one, I like the artwork just as a look of it. I like this concept of her picking up this trident, which looks like a combination between Heliod's spear and God's Rend.
Yeah.
What I would like to draw attention to is, number one, the art looks beautiful. It really, really does. Yeah. Number two, look at that spear. Look at that trident.
It's dripping.
It's dripping with a black oil.
Oh, you reckon Phyrexians?
Boys, I think we do in Phyrexia.
Oh, boy.
Think they do in Phyrexia?
I think we do in Phyrexia. I don't think we're doing it on Theros. I potentially think that this might be the first little indication as to where the story is going.
Do you reckon Elspeth's going to get corrupted by Phyrexian oil?
I don't know if she'll get corrupted by Phyrexian oil, or if the Phyrexian oil is being used for something down in the underworld. But I don't know. It's just, you've got a black tarish substance, and I know that wizards have done it before, where they've made a card with a black tarish substance and then gone, oh no, it's not Phyrexian oil. It was it was one of the cards in Modern Horizons that was it was the one that became a 3/3 dinosaur when you paid a certain amount of mana. And that one was like a black drippy substance. Everyone was like, oh my word, it's Phyrexians. And they went, no, it's just a black drippy oil. Like, it's not Phyrexian. It may just be later on. They're just like, no, it's just the way that the spear looks. But to me, for them to reveal this card and to have a black dripping with oil-like substance on a spear directly behind this kind of pit, which seems to kind of have this kind of weird, kind of almost smoky looking thing, I'm thinking we've got something to do with the Phyrexians and something to do with Ashiok. Ashiok's may be involved.
That would make sense, actually, because we've cycled through like some of Magic's big bads recently. So obviously we had like the Phyrexians and New Phyrexia, then we've kind of like gone away from them a bit, and we've dabbled with the Eldrazi, and then we've dabbled with Nicol-Bolas. And like Nicol-Bolas' stories obviously come to like
a temporary finish.
A convenient finish, yeah. A convenient temporary finish. And I don't think people want the Eldrazi back quite yet. I think we're still suffering from Eldrick's Moon.
I was going to say, I think the Eldrazi winter is still fresh in people's minds.
So I wonder if they're cycling back to the Phyrexians as like the new big bad for the next couple of sets. And I'm absolutely down for that. Like, I'd love to return to Mirrodin if they can take 5 minutes and decide not to break it for once.
I don't know what you're talking about. Genuinely, I don't even think it's a thing. I honestly think they're going to potentially do a more long-running storyline, but without the use of the Gatewatch potentially. So it is just slowly but surely feeding in this concept. So like Elsbeth gets this new spear, this new kind of weapon that happens to be dripping with this like oil that's kind of driven her mad to kill people, and does a Kratos on them. And then maybe like layer of behemoths. The idea is maybe the plot is like the behemoths are acting strangely. They're more angry. They're mad. They're rabid. And you kind of think to yourself, maybe we're slowly setting up that concept. Like maybe I'm entirely wrong and I'm reading too much into it, or maybe I'm stumbling on something.
I would love it if you're right.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like I love the long form storytelling they've been doing recently. Like I don't follow the Magic story kind of at all, really. But I love like the thematicness of the sets. Like I really like the Ravnica sets, and I really like that everybody coming together, and like the long form storytelling of like Tezzeret on Kaladesh and stuff. I thought they're getting they used to do long form storytelling quite a lot, and then they shied away from it, and I'm really quite glad they're going back towards it.
I like the slow dripping of kind of individual ideas. So here's the planar bridge, here's the immortal sun, here's the army, and like that slow drip, like every set had just like one thing in it. It wasn't like here is a major, because like let's be honest here, I don't think any of us particularly care about the overall arcing Magic the Gathering story, but I do like when we have just the small drips where you're like, oh, I recognize this from a previous set because it was kind of introduced. That's why I really liked War of the Spark, because it was almost like here is everything kind of fun about the last few years in sets kind of given back to you, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, it was a gratuitous ending, but that's what it was meant to be. It was meant to be like here's a big hurrah and all the characters you like, let's have fun, because Dragon Battle.
Yeah, Infinity War of the Endgame or whatever it's called.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, I really hope you're right. Like, if it is fractional, I think that's super cool. If it's not, I'm sure it's something interesting. I'm just happy Elspeth's back.
I'm also happy Elspeth is back, even though it was very obvious. What do we think of the trailer for Theros Beyond Death, just quickly?
I thought it was really good. I didn't understand what was going on, but
I don't think we were supposed to, but yes.
Yeah. I'm glad, because I was so confused, but I thought it was really awesome. I don't know who they get in to animate these things, but they are so sweet.
Oh yeah, they're knocking it out of the park, aren't they?
I'm happy they've gotten and started doing proper CG trailers, because I like all three of them. This is maybe my least favorite of the three, but the sound editor in me listened to the bit where she gets dragged underneath and all of the music just kind of gets absorbed and softens, and I'm like, oh, that's my jam. That right there is my apricot and blueberry jam. I'll have that.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's got a very distinctly different tone to the rest of them. But I just like it because I like Elspeth. I think she's very cool. I like Ashiok. I think they're very cool. And
nice
Elspeth,
use of pronouns.
Ashiok just messing with Elspeth seems like a really cool idea.
Is Ashiok meant to be a bad person? Is she a...
They're like...
Oh, sorry.
It's kind of an unknown, really.
I think they're one of the planeswalkers with their own agenda.
They would.
I'm not 100% sure, though.
I would argue in D&D terms, she is chaotic neutral.
Quite possibly,
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, they are chaotic neutral. I do apologize. They are genderless.
Yes. Like, they turned up in War of the Spark to mill people and exile stuff. That's all I know.
That's the reason why I think she's bad, because I lost to them in War of the Spark, and it just...
That happens. Yes. But no, I am looking forward to the new Theros set. We will have to wait and see. I'm going to have to try and find a pre-release near me, because unfortunately my usual haunt of pre-releases has decided to not shut down but move, and I don't know where they're moving to yet.
Come down, stay down in Nottingham with me. We'll go together.
I was going to say I'll probably jump in if you could, but there we go.
I will message that my local LGS. And I'll get us booked in.
I got to play with Power 9 on Magic Arena recently because of the event decks, which was quite enjoyable.
They did that, didn't they?
Yeah, they did an Elspeth versus Ashiok decks, and they both included Power 9 cards. So both of them include Moxes. So we got Mox Jet, Mox. I can never remember. Mox Sapphire and Mox. What's the white one? Mox Pearl.
Mox Pearl.
But we also had both decks had a Black Lotus. Both decks had not both decks. One deck had an Ancestral Visions.
Wow.
Presumably the Ashiok one.
Yes.
Please tell me that the white one had balance.
It did not.
Oh.
The white one got a little kind of boost in the idea that they included in it Sword of Fire and Ice. Which turns out is a good Magic card. Who would have thought?
Yeah, it is.
As I also realized at that point how entitled I would be if I was a vintage player, as I had a turn 1 Black Lotus and a land, and I got annoyed that I had to wait a turn to play my 5-drop. And I'm like, oh my god, diddums! Like I'm literally angry. I'm literally looking at my hand of land, Black Lotus. 5-drop something else, and I'm sat there going, I've got to wait till turn 2 to play this 5-drop. What the hell is wrong with me? Like, I'm just like, is this what Magic used to be like? It's a very weird thing playing really mediocre cards with a Black Lotus, where it's like, I'm going to sacrifice this Black Lotus to play Massacre Girl.
So I think the silliest thing I've ever had is somebody play a Black Lotus against me to cast Flame Javelin.
Nice.
Which is 3 mana, deal 4 damage to target creature or player.
That'll do. Good.
I love the game. Then
I was going to say nothing's ever like. I'm trying to think what would be the silliest 3-drop you can cast off a Black Lotus. I'm trying to think. I still think Grey Ogre might be the worst card to cast with a Black Lotus.
What's that?
I know that's a loading ready run joke, but there we go.
What's that white card? That's actually like the worst card in Magic. It's like an Aven. Is it Aven Warrior or something? It's like 2 and a white for a 1/4 flyer.
Hey, it's got a massive arse. Don't insult it. That thing can block a 3/3.
Oh dear.
If 0/4 mill creatures have taught me anything, it's that giant asses win games. not through attacking, never through attacking,
just by blocking.
Yeah, just by blocking.
Not through attacking, dude. You need to play a Doran. Is it Doran? The tree folk that makes everybody have giant butts.
Yes, Doran the
Siege
Walking Tower.
Yeah, but that require me to not play standard.
Standard.
I really wanted to put him in my cube, incidentally, but he costs £5.
Oh no! Oh, whatever will you do? You pay £5 for a creature card.
I know.
There's my cube that sat there, and I'm just like, you sit there, Craterhoof Behemoth, and you do your thing.
So, how were the games, Hugh? Because I tend to find that Power 9, so particularly the Moxen, tend to lead to very one-sided games.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That hasn't changed then.
Right. Here is basically what happened in every single one of the games that I played. One of us would get ahead, and then one of us would play a Power 9, and then the other would lose. And this repeated.
Right.
So as it turns out, using a Black Lotus on turn 1 to cast a 4-drop basically wins you the game. Literally, who would have thought?
I think there's an old Pleasant Kenobi video where he's in a vintage cube. And
is that the one that's just called Black Lotus is a good Magic card?
I think it is. And it's where all his opponent does is he uses Black Lotus on turn 1 to cast a hero Blade Hole. And it's like, I can't beat this.
Yeah.
At all.
Well, that's the problem. Literally, that's what I found. I was at one point getting absolutely wrecked by the Elspeth deck that was just hitting me with big white creatures holding swords. Good swords, not bad swords. And then I drew an ancestral recall and just went, yeah, that'll work. Played that, drew a new hand, and then proceeded to exile everything they owned.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, this is how this plays.
So there is a saying in Canadian Highlander, which obviously, like the Power 9 is legal in. The first ancestral doesn't kill you, but the second and third probably do.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and I love vintage formats. I love Canadian Highlander, but things like the Power 9, the 5 Moxen, Black Lotus, and Ancestral Recall in particular, are all aggressively unfun to play against.
They win games. Like that's the thing. Literally, they are brokenly powerful, and there's a reason they are so expensive and coveted.
Yeah. So if you're playing against an aggro deck that plays a turn 1 or a turn 2 Moxen, or if you're playing against a control deck that manages to tutor for recall or a time walk, you're probably dead. Time walk and recall, like recall, you're almost certainly dead. Time walk, maybe not if you can disrupt it, but the Moxen in aggro decks are aggressively obnoxious.
Will say though, very fun to play with.
Yes, very, very fun to play with.
It's one of those like, oh, I feel powerful, and I can I can absolutely see why they are well, I knew why they were Power 9, but now getting to play with them, it's one of those like, ooh my sort of thing. It's like when you're a kid and your dad goes, yeah, you can use my razor, and like you hold it, and you're just like, this is the thing that I've been coveting for a while. Bzz, oh my, yes, I feel like a man here. And you already knew that it made you feel like a man, but it was just one of those confirming moments.
I feel like the best description I can come up with it is it's the feeling about when your opponent has a turn 1 Soul Ring in EDH, but you don't have 2 other people there to also grumble and then have the full resource of 3 people to get rid of it. It's just you and that dick.
Yeah. The reason why it's banned in 1-on-1, but any which way, I thought we'd end this podcast with a bit more of a lighter note than us just glaring at Power 9 from our slightly poorer ivory towers, and decide to have a bit more of a personal ending, which won't be a majorly long one. I just thought I'd ask kind of a little question. I thought we'd do this where if we haven't got a massive amount to talk about, we could occasionally interject with this, which is a kind of question brought to the table. And the question I want to bring to the table this week is, how did we get into Magic? Because I thought that would be something we could essentially give a little explanation about. What was your first set? What was your first memory? How did you get into it? Why?
It's a nice starting point, isn't it? And it like gets us to like chat about our history of Magic. Because I feel like the 3 of us all have very different histories of Magic.
Yeah, we are very different players at the end of the day, aren't we?
No, we are. And
which is really cool.
Yeah, and we've all entered at different moments, because Will's the longest running here, then very it's long. Me, then it's you, Sam.
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
It's interesting to kind of see why each of us got into Magic at the different points that we did. So Sam, since you're the youngest of the Magic players, I'm really interested to see, why did you get into Magic when you did, and when did you get into Magic?
So it was high school. I had a friend who, I think he'd kind of been flirting with the idea of card games, and he got in touch with me. I'm trying to remember. He got in touch with me because I'd played a bit of Hearthstone, and I must have spoken about it or something. And he was like, "Oh, this guy plays card games. Maybe I can, get him interested in playing this new cool thing that I found called Magic." And I had no idea what Magic was at this point. I'd seen people make references to this weird card game and this weird format called EDH. I don't know what kind of card game only has 3 letters for a name, but sure. And yeah, so he messaged me and he was like, "Hey, so there's this card game. It's really cool. And there's this product they make called dual decks, which are designed specifically for 2 players to get into Magic." And so he said that. I was like, "Yeah, this sounds really cool. Let's do it." And so we got that, played it a bunch of times. We must have played those things like it was the Nissa versus Obnix one. My friend got the Nissa side, I got the Obnix side. So I started out as a mono black player.
Man onto my own heart.
Yeah, and then we spent about and so that was kind of the start, and we spent a good year we upgraded our decks a little bit, but even then it wasn't powerful in any sense. I think at one point I got the Innistrad Deck Builders Toolkit, and
is that the Shadows over Innistrad one? Because
yes, yeah, which was really cool. And then I got on a train home from London. Can't remember why I was in London, and I left my suitcase on the train with all of my Magic cards in it.
Oops.
Yeah,
and it never got back to me.
Oh dear. So someone out there has got your has got your Obnixilis deck just somewhere.
Yes.
What's probably more distressing is it's probably just sitting in some Royal Mail locker somewhere.
Probably, honestly. It's
not Royal Mail, British Rail.
Yeah, just
or Royal Mail. Maybe it nicked it as well.
Maybe they took it. Yeah, and someone's got my very first Magic card, which is a crying shame because I would love to go back and see how terrible the decks were back then. But so then I took a bit of a break from Magic, and then kind of slowly got back into it, and I actually started playing for real at the Armenket pre-release. Because I'd played a bit of Hearthstone, and I felt like I was comfortable with how card games kind of functioned in general. So I went on to the pre-release. It was fun. I got smashed. People are very good at Magic, it turns out.
That is the pre-release
particularly
experience.
The people who used to play down at Chimera.
That was coming to university was definitely a big leap because I kind of flirted with. I got to university, and then first year was kind of okay. So there's this EDH group that meets up at university. I'll build a deck, get involved a little bit. The people down at Chimera were really awesome, but I wasn't as committed into Magic at that point to be able to go down regularly and play at drafts and things. And then I just got to I played a bunch of EDH at the university, chilled, and eventually got to where I am today. I think GP Birmingham was definitely the I don't know, kind of the thing that kind of has made me transition into a committed EDH player, I think, a committed Magic player. Because once you go to a GP, I think you learn so much, and it's kind of like a boot camp in a way that you get thrown so much information at you and it's so intense, and then you leave and you're like, well, I'm just a changed person now, a changed player.
I always think that GPs always show you the broader Magic community. It's very easy to get very, very insular with your Magic community. Then you go to a GP and it's like a sudden shock. It's like, oh, there's all these people and all these decks I've never seen before, and
everyone's so much better at Magic than me.
Yeah, it really opens your eyes to the entire community. Really, I love GPs.
It was a really eye-opening experience, and that was how I got started. It's been a bit of a stop. It's been a long, drawn-out, slow process because there's been community which is one Magic community which I've been able to commit to for extended periods of time.
I always liked. Your first GP experience is always one where you go to it and you think, oh my, this is very different suddenly from what I'm used to.
There's suddenly I'm no longer in a room with 30 people. I'm now in a room with
several hundred, if not 1,000.
Yeah. It's I'm now in a room with 1,500 people and I can walk up to any of them and start talking about how awesome this card game is. That's really super cool.
And every so often Mark Rosewater walks past you.
Yes. Yeah, every so often you just see Pleasant Kenobi. It's oh.
It's lad. So I got into Magic late-ish. Like most of my my current hobbies, I got into it when I was 19 years old because everything up until I was 18 years old was basically just a free trial run. As far as I'm concerned, and I decided I didn't want to buy anything when I was 18, so it's like, cool, 19, reset everything. And so I went to university. I spent the first year of university basically not doing much, and in the second year of university, I moved in with two friends, one of which was my great friend Luke, who is my best friend still to this day. And he brought his Magic cards with him, and he was explaining to me at some point, because I came downstairs and he was sat on the floor and he was sorting his Magic cards out. And I absolutely no idea what the hell this was, and he explained it to me. And he said how he had this elf deck and this vampire deck, and it was from a card game called Magic the Gathering, and that he was annoyed because there was no one that could play it with him, because he used to play it at home with his mum and his sister, because there was no one that would play it with him.
Sorry, can I interject here? Did he not know that me and James played?
No. As it turns out, Will was also my great friend from university, and straight up, we didn't know they played until both me and Luke were already playing each other quite a lot, and then it just kind of happened to happen.
Okay, so, I didn't realise that. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. So I decided completely out of nowhere, I was like, this seems kind of fun, because he basically went, what do you want to play? And he taught me the ropes. And he would usually play his elf deck, and I would usually play his vampire deck, or vice versa. And I thought, hey, this is fun. I'll go and see what I can get. So I wandered down to, my local game store, and I bought two decks, because I was like, I want to get into Magic. What do you recommend? And I got handed a couple of decks, and they were like, these are decks from the most recent most recent set. Maybe you'll enjoy them. And I got handed a blue-white Flyers deck, which was fine, and a more enjoyable deck, which was a green-white bolster deck, because the set that was out at the time I was there was Dragons of Tarkir. That was the set that I joined Magic in. However, I'd say my first proper set was Battle for Zendikar, because I returned to the shop a couple of weeks later to say I really enjoyed those decks, but Luke had told me about a color called red, and red sounded right up my alley of just play a thing, punch face. And I went, do you have any red decks that I could play, like the ones you've told me? And the bloke's name was Andy. He was the head lovely of Chimera. Chap. Lovely chap, one of literal salt of the earth. Would not hurt a fly. Absolutely adore the bloke. And he went, well, I've got this, and he handed me an Eldrazi deck that was Rakdos colors, and I fell in love with the Eldrazi. And I bought my first cards online, which were a load of cards that it turns out were straight up not legal in Modern. So my first proper built my own deck was in fact a legacy deck. And I kind of just went from there, and then I bought a load of packs from Battle for Zendikar, and a few months later, Luke informed me that the sets came out every 3 months, and the next one was coming up, and it was Oath of the Gatewatch, and we followed spoilers together, and I bought a fat pack of Oath of the Gatewatch, and I just kind of went from there, and I spiraled downwards into this pit of money that I've sunk into this thing.
I can remember me, you, Luke, and James following that spoiler season for Oath of the Gatewatch.
Yeah, because this was straight up after we figured out we all liked Magic. Yeah. Because I remember us having an argument about whether or not we thought that Sphinx of the Final Word was any good.
Yes, I still claim no.
Oh no, I agree with you now, because when I first saw the card, I literally turned off. This goes to show exactly like how I used to be. Because let me get Sphinx of the Final Word up, but it kind of shows you exactly how I used to think about Magic cards, where I looked at Sphinx of the Final Word, and I turned to Luke. I remember seeing it on his computer, and I turned to him, and it said it's instant you be countered by spells or abilities. And I turned to Luke and went, well, Control's dead then. Completely unironically, because I literally had no idea how to evaluate cards. And to me, a 5/5 flying hexproof Sphinx that couldn't be countered and stopped things countering was totally, completely going to destroy control decks. Because, every deck got to turn 7, because my decks got to turn 7, because they weren't powerful.
That's absolutely fair when you decide to put Thran Dynamo in your modern deck.
I loved my Eldrazi deck. I adored it. I managed to buy loads of cards offline and accidentally got given way more Eyes of Ugin than I should have got because they made mistakes in the ordering and they accidentally sent me 2. I straight up did not say anything about that one because why would I? Then the Eldrazi Winter happened and I sold them for 40 quid each. And I'm convinced that's tax evasion, but I honestly don't know. Anyway, Will, you've been in this card game longer than I've been alive. No, I'm kidding. How did you get into Magic?
So one thing, like hearing both those stories, and they're both super cute stories, and I think it's very interesting that you both got into it through friends. And just turning up and going, either friends giving you decks or you being given starter decks and just going there. It also strikes me that you're both relatively new compared to me, and it's just got me reevaluating how long I've been playing this game.
Well, again, we both got into it close to university, whereas you've been into it since you were 14 or something silly?
Something about that, yeah. So actually, my story actually starts when I was about 11. And it was because when I was 11, both me and my friends who had just gone to secondary school were obsessed with zero punctuation, Yahtzee Croshaw, and obviously Yahtzee, the game reviewer, and obviously Yahtzee Croshaw resides on theescapist.com doing his reviews, and we were very, very obsessed with those videos. And then one day, another creator popped up on zero punctuation on theescapist.com, and it was Loading Ready Run. And my friends just weren't bothered about it, and I started watching the videos thinking, this is weird sketch comedy, this is brilliant. And I absolutely fell in love with Loading Ready Run. I have watched their back catalogue numerous times. I adore all their videos. I still watch basically everything they put out. And one day they put out a video called It's Magic, which, if you know anything about Loading Ready Run, you'll know that's unofficially the first episode of their Friday night series. But I was transfixed. I had no idea what this game was, what the jokes were. It just looked really fun. And I was already kind of predisposed to this because I played a lot of tabletop war games. So I played a lot of Warhammer 40,000 and a lot of Warhammer Fantasy and Battlefleet Gothic, all that sort of thing. And I was very, very entrenched in those communities at that time. I used to play Warhammer every single week. I used to go down to my local shop and play and knew all the staff and knew everybody who went down there. But I couldn't find anybody to play with me. So I was very interested in this Magic thing. But for about 2 years, I couldn't find anybody who would play with me. And then one day I was just chatting about it in my local game shop, and my friend Mitch was like, oh, you want to play Magic? I kind of play Magic. Why don't you come down to our local LGS in Sheffield? We'll get you a deck, and then we'll start playing. And so we did. So we went down to Patriot Games in Sheffield, and I bought my very first deck. And my very first deck was a starter deck from New Phyrexia.
Oh,
so
blimey.
I bought the Infect starter deck.
As in the one that you only need to change 2 cards out to make it a standard power.
Yeah. Yeah. So I bought the Infect starter deck and then started playing against my friend Mitch. And I almost quit because my friend Mitch had a blue-black mill deck.
Oh my, okay.
And I hated it. I could not beat it. Partly because I was bad at the game and didn't really understand the rules. And partly because there's nothing more demoralizing to a new player than seeing all of your fancy cards go from your library where you can play them into your graveyard where you can't.
A pain we still feel to this day.
Yeah, definitely. And I was quite disheartened, and then I started going to a local kind of gaming club, mainly to play tabletop war games. And there was a bunch of other lads there who were like, oh yeah, we kind of play Magic. It was like, I'll play you guys. And I scraped together kind of a mono white life game deck, Angels deck, and started playing against those guys. But it was all like super chill, like kitchen table Magic as you were. So like one day, one of the lads rocked up with the grave. Do you know like the legacy event deck that they did? That was all foil.
Yeah,
the Graveborn deck or something like that.
Something
he rocked up with that while I was playing like janky common Angels from Standard at the time because we were in Innistrad. It was like, oh dear. But yeah, so it was funny. It was like proper kitchen table stuff. And then I left. I went to university, which is obviously where I met Hugh in my first year. And I met mine and Hugh's mutual friend, James. And we were chatting about it because James had done some geekery stuff in his time and he knew a little bit about Warhammer and we were talking about the lore. And he was like, oh, do you play Magic? It was like, I kind of play Magic. It was like, come to my room because we were in the same halls. He was like, come to my room and we can play EDH. It's like, what? What's EDH? It was like, come, I'll show you. And he introduced me to Commander. And I hated it.
And you still do to this day.
Still do to this day. So I hated it because James, we hadn't quite worked out that like all Magic cards weren't exactly born equal. And so I was trying to play this like mono white Avacyn Commander deck that I'd thrown together somehow, and he was playing the Mimeoplasm.
Whoa.
Like the pre-constructed Mimeoplasm deck that's actually kind of brutal.
Yeah.
I hated it. I just hated it. Could not stand it. It's a miracle I kept playing, really. And then I went home one week in second year. I went home one week and a mate of mine invited me to a draft of the second Modern Masters set. I was like, all right, fine. I kind of like Magic. I'll go play that. So I went to this draft and I opened my first pack, looked through it, went, oh, my rare's kind of sucky. I'll take this uncommon. And then I passed my pack to the bloke next to me and he was like, gave me like the side eye. It's like, are you all right?
You always know you've done something wrong when you get that side eye.
He just leaned over to me and went, mate, do you know much about like Magic card values? It's like, nah, mate, I don't really.
Mate, do you know anything about Magic, though?
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, because it's your first pick, I'm going to give you your pack back. I was like, all right. It's like, take the rare. I was like, why? He was like, it's worth about 20 quid. It's like, oh shit, right, okay. Should probably take it. It was a Mox Opal.
God, I love that story.
Yeah, it was funny. So I was like, oh, fine, I'll take this. I'll build some janky blue-white artifacts deck. Anyway, so I got home and just like, why on earth is this card worth about 40 quid? 20 quid or whatever. And I started digging about online and I discovered that Modern was a thing. And like Magic had formats and stuff like that. I was like, oh, this is cool. And I went back and obviously I knew Hugh and Luke were playing at this point. And I was like, hey, we should try this format thing. And you guys were like, hey, that sounds cool. And this is when Hugh decided to bring legacy cards to a Modern fight.
Literally no one told me. And it turns out Fan Dynamo is not a Modern card. It is in fact Legacy. I still lost straight up to your Affinity deck.
Yeah, so I built like some janky Affinity deck that I still love to this day that had like Signal Pests and Install Artifacts in it. And we went down to our local LGS one night and played in a Modern FNM. And at that point, when I played in that Modern FM, I seem to recall I got my ass absolutely kicked. And I was hooked.
I was going to say this was almost when I quit Modern because this was during the time where our local LGS was full of nothing but control players, and I think I hated it.
Yeah, it's when we first ran into a bunch of the control players because our local LGS used to have a very, very strong control meta.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was to the point where I literally couldn't bring a single deck without deciding not to quit.
Yeah. But, like, I didn't really care how much I got my ass kicked. As soon as I started playing that, like, constructed, that 60 card constructed, I was hooked. Absolutely 100% hooked. And from there, like, I became friends with all the people at the LGS, and then obviously still carried on watching Loading Ready Run, stuff like that. And then like when Loading Ready Run started putting out their Canadian Highlander stuff, I started watching that, and then I was like, I can't really play this. And I floated the idea around the LGS, and we started playing Canadian Highlander. It's very nice. And I was convinced for years that I hated EDH, absolutely loathed it. And that changed when I met Sam.
Turns out all you need is a slightly more powered down version of it. Turns out you need to make the format fun. Who would have thought?
Yeah, so me and you, Sam, met when I was in my PhD, and you were like, hey, I play Magic and I play EDH. We should play EDH. It's like, all right.
And Will, you responded with, who are you and why are you talking?
No, we already knew each other by then, but like it was like a funny little coincidence that we both ended up playing Magic and being in the same group. But yeah.
It was a very, I think, if I remember rightly, Will said something like, I'm going to a GP this weekend or something like that. And I was like, oh, is that for Magic? And Will was like, yes.
Yes.
Why do you know Magic?
Oh, was that Liverpool by any chance?
Yes.
I was going to say you didn't do. It must have been because you didn't do London.
No, I didn't do London because I was at my
your brother's
wedding.
Yeah, I was going to say. I do like the fact that despite the fact you were in Magic a lot longer than I was, you didn't get into it properly until about the same time I did.
So I was always dipping in and out. The problem was I really, really enjoyed like proper kitchen table Magic because I think everybody enjoys proper kitchen table Magic.
Oh yeah.
And then I couldn't really find my place in like the Magic community until I found Modern. Because like I had no interest in Standard. I couldn't really afford to draft a lot. I think I drafted once or twice and enjoyed it, but like ultimately I was an undergraduate with like a Warhammer problem. Like I didn't have money. So like finding Modern and then finding my love of trying to make budget brews in Modern was like where I finally found my place. And then like years later I decided I liked the minutiae of it all enough to like train as a judge. And I trained as a judge 6 months ago. No, not even that.
Something along those lines. I remember you floating the idea and thinking about it and looking to sponsor you around GP Liverpool time.
I'd been thinking about it for about a year before GP Liverpool, and then I talked to some people on GP Liverpool, but unfortunately trying to get my qualification was a little bit like pulling teeth, because getting a judge qualification is a lot easier if you have level 2 judges in your area, and unfortunately we just don't. So it took a long time for me to qualify.
It's fun. We all had very different paths into Magic, and yet we all kind of end up in the exact same place, somehow sitting around recording a podcast talking about jank. And if that's not the ultimate end goal of every single Magic player, I straight up don't know what is.
Yeah, like ultimately that is what I've always loved about Magic, and it's like it's something that I've always loved all the way through my Magic career. It's like I loved discovering Magic and talking about it, and then I loved the kitchen tableness and like everybody talking about the cards they've just discovered, and then us sitting around your university house living room on the floor chatting about like this modern thing that we discovered and all the weird decks we found, and like when one of us first discovered Oops All Spells in Legacy and trying to explain it to each other, to like the conversations you have at the end of F&Ms like nowadays, like talking about the modern meta. Like just people sat around talking about Magic is one of the true delights.
It is. And on that though, gentlemen, I think a good place to end this discussion of Magic is fun when you're playing it, and it's also fun when you're just talking about it. So
very wholesome.
Indeed.
Definitely.
Thank you very much for listening to Chillin and Millin. We will be back, and hopefully we'll all have survived Christmas because it is almost Christmas. So I'll say I'll say to you, viewers, Merry Christmas, have a Happy New Year,
have a Merry Christmas,
and we'll see you in the next decade.